Hello, I'm Timothy Linsdau. I'm a video producer and a Christian and paying attention to global warming.
Yeah, it's global warming today. There was an article in the San Diego Union Tribune on how polarizing climate change is going to be on the economy. I'm Jim Linsdau, Tim's brother. I'm a journalist and writer-director and also a Christian. Today's article is a study on red states are expected to be among hardest hit by climate change, written by Joshua Emerson Smith. Now, in this, it indicates that red states could be the hardest hit, and the reason being is because red states tend to vote Republican. And therefore, since Republican candidates tend not to press climate change as an issue, they're doomed for more difficulty when it comes to the economic changes that will happen with global warming.
So what do they think, we deserve it, or?
Yeah, well, you have to understand that in the article, and I have to give Smith some credit because he does point out how some scientists do not agree at all with what the study from I guess it was University of California, San Diego, and the Brookings Institute indicated that the greenhouse gases that are not being addressed are going to affect the South more because, of course, that means that they will become hotter. And the North, which they point out tends to be wealthier than the poorer South, will benefit from the warming effects because agriculture will boom in the Midwest.
So you'd be growing more food.
Growing more food, less trouble with winter, less use of natural resources as far as having to warm your home or having to use energy. There's a kind of a conflict there, I would say, because they're saying the South is poorer, the North is richer, but when the North becomes more like the South, they're going to do better.
The irony, huh?
A bit of irony on that, yes.
So the thing I read not too long ago, an article, which kind of surprised me with the argument over CO2 in the atmosphere and warming, is that the warming period actually started before the CO2 increased.
That's correct. I've seen similar studies that show that warming increases the CO2, right?
Okay.
And not the CO2 increasing the warming. So
Okay.
Greenhouse effects make it difficult to follow something like this article indicating that if you're a Republican, your economic status is going to be affected in a much more deleterious way than if you vote Democrat.
It has a kind of a funny ring to it that it's God's punishment on the Republicans for not paying attention to that, but I'm assuming that's not why they're saying that.
Well, they don't mention God in the article. That's true, but I would think if you have any connection with Christianity or God, that you would think He would have a hand in how the climate is going to affect us in the future. But there are some scientists that do not buy into this particular idea, and one of them, one of the most prominent, is Judith Curry, who is a professor emeritus in climate and atmosphere at Georgia Tech.
Really?
And she said, that basically most of the climate science, I think most of this is climate science fiction.
Hmm.
So now you have to think to yourself, all right, if it's science fiction, what is the purpose of trying to indicate that if you vote Republican as opposed to voting Democrat, that you increase the possibility that your financial status, your economic chances in this world are going to decrease. So it's a very political article, and it just kind of amazes me that they would write something to this effect because it isn't based on science, and the science of climate change is being debated quite a bit. And as far as voters are concerned, only about, it's at the bottom of the list as far as issues are concerned. So it's almost like if we can just create this polarization effect and make people think that if the climate warms up a bit, it's going to hurt your wallet, that makes it kind of like, all right, can you explain that? Well, what they're talking about here is that, the Midwestern country or Midwestern states are going to do much better.
So again, they've come up with an argument that's polarizing, to divide people and divide and conquer, if you will. It sounds like that type of a story again.
Well, it seems to be simply because it doesn't say in here that there's definitely new evidence. It simply says that some scientists say that forest fires are created by climate change. Well, Jerry Brown, former Governor Jerry Brown, said that same thing, but I don't think Governor Jerry Brown's a scientist. So that, again, sounds a little bit political to me.
Yes. And I've heard that one of the arguments with forest fires is the lack of forest management. And I believe even the American Indians in California were known for burning the underbrush in forests to increase growth for animals, which gave them more food source. And apparently they managed it. Now just think that's, I don't know how long, centuries, several centuries they were doing that. And that modern people today haven't figured that out, that you keep the underbrush down, the fuel load down, either through proper management, whatever that might be, clearing brush or even controlled fire.
Well, let me point out something else that the article says, that the two states that will probably benefit the most from this economic change and brought on by climate are California and Illinois. Now, both are liberal states, Democrat states. Mm-hmm. Now, the point is, California has been devastated by forest fires, yet people vote Democrat, meaning they should be voting for the climate change that's going to bring them the benefit. So I don't know. To me, there's a conflict. I mean, if the state's burning up, how's that good for the economy?
I would think not.
I don't think so either. And this is just a point I have to make. The state that is going to be hit the hardest is Florida. And do you know the voice of Florida?
Yeah.
Rush Limbaugh.
Oh, my. Place is going to catch on fire and burn down.
Yeah, no doubt. So I really think this polarization that's being created by climate change, I'd like to see that stop. We talked the other day about good government.
Yes.
Good government is not about creating hysteria. It's about solid science, policies based on solid science, and not policies based on hurting the economics of people who, for whatever reason, decide they don't want to believe in climate change, or that they're going to put it on the bottom of the list.
Well, what's fascinating in San Diego, we had a weather reporter who started the Weather Channel that was against the global warming story. And he argued against it, made documentaries on the subject, that this just was a hoax. And as you said, good science matters. It's probably one of the reasons it's not a big push, or it's low on the totem pole of concerns, because there's just a lot of doubt among the people on this subject.
Well, not only that, but Professor Curry had a quote in the paper that said, however, there is little evidence that the recent warming has worsened such events. And she says basically that man does not create global warming. And so if man doesn't create it, then what is it that we can do about it?
That seems like a problem. I've read articles on the sun. The sun's effect on the earth at times is hotter than it is at other times. and you can get a fluctuation like that. There's history to show that we have had cooling periods and warming periods centuries ago.
No, that's true. I want to correct myself. It wasn't Curry that said that. It was a Professor J. Lair. And he said, if you ask people, or he said, what I know for sure is that man's impact on the climate is zero.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, after all the polarizing argument we've had, that'll be a hard one to convince one side or the other, but wow, that's good news, though.
Yeah, yes. And that one thing it does tell you is that San Diego, for whatever reason, should benefit from climate change.
There we go. All right. I'm Timothy Linsdau. Please comment and like our video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.
Thank you for watching.